earlier session, we talked about the transition, and there are 2 transitions and 3 phases: the setup, the backswing and the downswing. So we've made the transition from the static address by loading the left shoulder through 9 inches. But once we get to the top of the backswing, the pause drill that we're using in the last section can also be valuable in training us in good transition. Now, one of the things that puzzled me as a kid was seeing photographs of great players at the top of the swing. The shaft was bowed, the cameraman had caught the shaft at the transitional point, and it was patently obvious that people like Snead, Hogan and Brian Nelson had already started the journey with their legs and their hips. And I think that leads people to lead the legs and hips a little bit too much sometimes. So when we do the pause drill and we swing to top, we've loaded the shoulder. It's like a great big coil, and now the hands must distribute their power. So if I coil and swing to the top and pause, then everything comes down in sync. When there's a golf ball there, the hips and the legs instinctively win the race. So if I spin a pebble across the pond, my hip and my leg lead, I'm not thinking about it. As the ball comes over the net in tennis, my leg is going forwards, my hand goes back. If you photograph that, you might think that I'm thinking about moving my hips. So my belief is that when a golfer loads fully and releases freely as a flowing motion, the hips and the legs start the downswing. So I'm fairly sort of categoric and dogmatic about the setup and the backswing. I believe there are absolutes about those things, but I do concede to the fact that there's loads of ways of skinning a cat, and the art of the downswing is many and varied. But as long as you understand the variations, you don't get lost. So you've got choices, but you have to understand the choices and the ramifications. So we've prepared mentally, we've loaded the shoulder. This particular section is the transition from shoulder coil to release. So here I am, 18th tee Pebble Beach, aiming the shaft, building the grip. So what's the backswing for? To create power. Let's do it. Let's load the shoulder, coil. Okay, now the transition is in my hand, arms and club. I release the club. So you can see that I can hit the shot with a pause at the top. But what happened was I loaded everything, and when I would release the hand, everything came together. What we'll see in the natural swing with no pause, we'll see the hips and the legs win the race instinctively, I believe. Okay, Mr. Hogan taught clear the hip first. Okay, and for someone that hooked the ball in his career, that's a good idea. My club golfers who don't draw the ball, the more they spin the hip, the further it goes right. So I have to get them to a level of sufficient skill before I can talk about hip clearance, I believe. So for the intermediate golfer, I think it's beneficial to load the shoulder and then release the club as a clear thought. Okay, so I'll do the 2 again. Here is the pause version. Okay. Coil fully, now release. I didn't quite catch that one, but it will do. And then on this one, I'm not going to pause, but I believe you'll see that my hips and legs clear quite quickly. Happily, it was my most fluid shot, and I think in slow motion, you would have seen this. And the hips and the legs lead. People notice that Sam Snead, as he started his downswing, his knees spread slightly, and people copied it. Well, that's like putting red spots on your face with a Sharpie pen and saying you've got measles. No, you haven't. You've got the appearance of measles. So when you see a person do something in this thing, whatever it might be, don't mimic it for its own sake. Try and find out why it's happened. So I hope you've understood from this piece that having turned the shoulder in the real swing, the hips and the legs win the race. If your hips and legs are not igniting, to me that suggests that you haven't loaded the shoulder fully or you haven't released the hands fully. Good leg action is the fruit of good movement and not the cause.